Right, welcome back. Before the break, we asked you, do opinion polls help or hurt the politics in this country? Do opinion polls help or hurt the politics in this country? And just to read a few of your responses, Maurice Omolo says that opinion polls are used by power barons to tilt the undecided minds and are not vital as they lack the true picture of reality. Kevin Kelly says the polls do not depict the real situation of what's going on the ground. Politics is dynamic and the numbers keep changing. And finally, Demigod says that Kenyans are never honest. They just try to sound smart whenever they're asked for their opinion. That's interesting. Keep interacting with us at Julie Masiga at KTN News. Of course, the hashtag is news sources. Now, the Jubilee government has boasted of fulfilling at least 70% of its manifesto. But while the Jubilee government has crafted its plan around a united country and inclusive government that it says has rolled out equitable development, the opposition's National Super Alliance says its manifesto will focus on social transformation with tenets of efficient economic management, good governance, inclusivity, and strong support for devolution structures that they said were lacking under the current administration. So what is new? What is new? What is new, guys? It sounds like they have perhaps the same editor and writer and copywriter and proofreader of their manifestos.
Generally, looking at the NASA team, you may see some zeal, especially when they speak about social justice, addressing things to do with the historical injustices. You can see some zeal in devolution, and that's the key to at least bringing equal opportunity to everyone. But if the Jubilee side tells you that they've achieved most of what they set out to do, then you'll hear, if you ask questions or if they're in rallies, the first thing they will tell you, tumewapea stima, tumewajengea reli. That's not exactly what they promised alone. They said they will create a double-digit economy. They'll create jobs, 1 million. The stadium. I'm still hopeful that they will build
the 5 stadium.
They will build those stadium and create 4 million jobs. Because I've seen so many companies laying off. That's an indicator that the economy is doing badly.
Right.
So if someone can just come on the podium and start jumping up and telling you, tumewapea stima, tumewapea reli. You know, reli doesn't resonate even with people in Turkana.
But you know that
doesn't resonate with someone who has graduated from university.
Yes, but the sad fact about this SGR, even in as much as the trains are old and it was overpriced, is that it is going to open up our economy. So can we at least accept that
let's
fact?
move from the SGR discussion. Let's stick to the 70%. There's a book I read called No Future Without Forgiveness by Desmond Tutu about the Truth and Justice Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. And it just showed me how wounds, historical injustices can affect the progress of a nation. We can build skyscrapers, we can do all these things, but at the snap of a finger, we can crash it all down if we do not really deal with people feeling like this country belongs to a few. We haven't addressed the historical injustice. So I actually like the idea that we're talking about social justice, we're talking about implementing the Truth and Justice Reconciliation Commission report. That really will heal the country, and a country that is healed, we can now talk about 45 million strong. Currently, we can only talk about 2 tribes strong. But we actually need to move forward to a level where we actually say that Kenyans, whether you're in Turkana, whether you're in Mombasa, whether you're in central Kenya, whether you're in Kisumu, you feel like this country is actually your country and you belong to it. And that's why I feel that is very, very new. And if it can be implemented and taken to task, and we can see change in this country where people can heal, come together and live together as brothers and sisters, we can build, we can go to Mars, we can explore the universe.
Good point. But my problem is this. Everybody makes promises. In 2013, Jubilee made promises. Right now, even though they have zeal, they have the zeal right now as they're making the promises. What about the implementation? 5 years, as I said, these are the same people we've been seeing around for at least 20 years. Can they really make a change, Dr. Nelly?
I think for me, anybody who's listening to these statements is not interrogating the issues. We've never had a problem saying what we think Kenyans want, because as Kenyans, we know what we want. We want security, we want a good road system, we want good education system. People want to eat, they want to thrive, they want to work, they want to live, not exist or scrap by, you know. Our challenge is that our leaders know what we need, and they tell us that. But what they don't tell us is the how. And that's why when we come to, after we've elected them in office, we don't know how to hold them accountable.
Yes.
Okay? But here we are, we're talking about saying we want the SGR. The SGR it has been brought, but before we never asked at what cost, because that's the question we're fighting now.
Yes.
We feel like we've over-invested.
Right.
If we move to, let's move on to health, for instance. We were told there'll be free maternity. But has free maternity improved our lifestyles, really? Have mothers stopped dying because we said free maternity. In fact, for us as doctors, what we say is that mothers stopped dying at home and came to die in the hospital because all you did is change where they're delivering, but you didn't increase the manpower to take care of them, the infrastructure and things like that. And so Jubilee's scorecard can be 70% them ticking it off, but impact-wise, there isn't 70% being felt yet. So what then does NASA bring different?
Right, let's talk about what NASA brings and what NASA is promising, because Raila has actually promised to lower the cost of food and rent, also to direct 50% of national revenues to counties, to introduce free education from nursery to secondary, to scrap Standard 8 and Form 4 national examinations, to arrest and jail corrupt officials, recover stolen funds, introduce crop and livestock insurance schemes, promote value addition in agriculture. Now, these are the things that Raila is promising. They sound very familiar.
Yeah, because all these things, sorry to pick it up from right there, that's my problem right there. What is new? Adding value addition to agriculture. Do you actually know that Kenya as a country, we have agriculture insurance? Yet we saw people die of drought. We actually are part of African countries that came together and put together an insurance fund to protect us during drought. But people have died. We haven't seen the government stepping up and saying our money, the one we keep there, has been brought and has taken care of these people. We're still having Red Cross asking people to ask to raise money to feed our brothers and sisters. So Raila isn't saying anything new. It's already there. That's what I want to ask him. How are you going to do it differently?
And that's a very good question, Danish. When you say that they might, if there's a change of government in August, they might change things. I think the question is the how, not the what, because everybody seems to know what the what is.
I like this discussion we're having, but in 2002, when Kanu was being removed from power, Kenya was the most optimistic country in the world. Sometimes there's need to be physical change for people to actually see the change happening. And the how is a very good discussion point for all of us as either journalists, the civil society, and pressure groups, for us to continue reminding the political class that we actually need to see the how. The government of the day came to power with a lot of promises. Some of them they have delivered. I'm not as pessimistic as Rajab is. They have delivered quite a bit of it. But for me, my only front is, even as we move towards building a double-digit economy and doing all these impossible things that seems like that, can we address the real issues of historical injustices and inclusivity and people dealing with negative ethnicity? The how is very, very important. And that's the discussion I think we need to ask the politicians. How will you do it, Mr. Raila Odinga? How will you do it, Mr. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta?
Okay, talking about something like Raila pledges to arrest and jail corrupt officials, recover stolen funds. During the Grand Coalition government, there was also a lot of grand corruption, of which he was a part. We didn't see a lot of people, we didn't see anybody
going to jail for that.
going to jail for that. So how do you think he can change that
when
around?
you compare President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga and say that all of them were in government, Uhuru is the president. Then he was the prime minister with no absolute powers. I wish what President Uhuru said today, saying that now he will introduce death penalty on those who vandalize that SGR. If he did the same to the corrupt fellas, he would have been of great help. Not just saying he's helpless. A president cannot tell Kenyans that he's helpless. At least for Raila, when he says he will jail, he will be the president if he wins the election. Then we can judge him when he's now the president and compare him to his equal, who is now Uhuru Kenyatta, who will be the opposition leader, maybe. So, but now compare him and when he was the prime minister, I think those are wrong comparisons.
Okay, let me just compare their pledges, because now Uhuru is pledging that there will be free education from primary to secondary school. He will also connect 70% of homes to electricity, construct 10,000 kilometers of roads, improve the free maternity care services and the stipends for the elderly and the school feeding programs, and double and diversify national strategic food reserves from 22% of annual consumption to 40%. He also says he will mechanize agriculture and subsidize fertilizers to improve production. He also says that gender equality is important and it shall be mainstreamed. So again, these things sound very familiar. Yes, generic. It's like they have the same person drafting the
Rating him to what he has done during his 5-year rule.
Yes.
He can't achieve that, what he's promising, because he has already let us down.
I think this is what they pledged.
Like on gender equity.
They pledged to carry on with their...
Even when he was being elected for the first time, he had promises along that line, but he has not achieved them. Even half of them he has not achieved. So how does he make us believe that now give him another term, he will deliver?
Okay, my thing is this, because we've seen a lot of the opposition, we've seen them in government. We've seen them operating as government officials. We've seen what they've done, what they did. We've judged them by what they were able to achieve. And now they've come back to ask us for their vote. So we're not even guessing about their capabilities. We've seen them. So how are they different is my question, Dr. Nelly.
You know, the issue, I won't even bother to touch on the issue of corruption. Because I think where we are sitting, anybody who is in either of these two parties currently has been in governments that have been involved in corruption before, hasn't really done much. To say that the corruption in Uhuru's reign has been more than the previous might not necessarily be an indication that if we had had a different government, things would have been different. I think we've practiced corruption so well, we've become extremely good at it. Now we just go for bigger chunks. In the Kibaki era, we talked about millions. Now we only talk about billions. And probably whoever else comes next will probably take it a notch higher if we don't
All right, running out of time, so Danny,
I feel really, really bad that of the Uhuru pledges, none talks about corruption. It is government has been mentioned as a government for the first time in the history of our country. People have been carrying money in sacks. In open daylight robbery, the only thing we did not have is that we never wore masks and we never had AK-47
But I do think in their manifesto they didn't mention corruption.
Does not matter. They have said here, we're talking about what you've mentioned here.
Right.
And that's very,
running
very
out of time, Danny. Sorry, quickly, Ramadan, any thoughts about
I
this?
think from Dr.'s sentiment, she seems helpless. So does it mean that we don't have options? Does it mean that we get stuck to this problem that we have today? A change of government will bring at least a new change of system and how things are done.
Isn't that just new things?
Yes.
This is the narrative right now on social media.
That's a generic and defeatist argument.
Right,
I hear on the streets every time.
We'll have to cut you off there, but finally, on a very somber note, terrorists have in the past 3 weeks blasted vehicles in parts of northeastern Kenya and Lamu, claiming the lives of at least 28 people. Questions have been raised about how it was possible for the terrorists to plant explosives without being detected. And today, 8 people were killed in Lamu after the vehicle drove over an improvised explosive device. They included 7 administration police officers and 1 civilian. Are we back to random attacks? Are we back? This is also a very sensitive time because it's Ramadan. It's a holy time for our Muslim brothers and sisters. Of course, we're leading up to a general election. And being Ramadan, a few of the curfews were modified and verified to allow, varied, to allow the Muslim community in Kenya to actually observe Ramadan. So it's very sad that we're experiencing these terror attacks at this particular point in time. What do you think is happening, Ramadan?
Last time on this show, I said we need to really investigate the nexus between politics and terrorism. Because when you look at the intensity of these terror attacks, it's always revolving around election time or after elections. So we need to do that. Secondly, we've launched APCs, big events. We've launched it, celebrated it publicly. What are they doing? Like today is a very sad incident in Lamu. These guys were in an APC, but they were blown up and they died. So does it mean we are just being duped?
An APC being an armored vehicle,
yes,
right?
Which it shouldn't be damaged the way it has been damaged. That one raises the questions on who procures such facilities, and are they really serving us?
Could it be a case of it's election time and there are very many VIPs running around, people who are running for office? Maybe the security forces are focused in that direction.
That's actually what my point really is.
And on the flip side, does it mean maybe there is a political hand in also these events?
I don't think so. I just think that we know how we are. We're having rallies. We move all our police officers to go to stop Joho from attending and doing useless things when they really should be focusing on security. We need to reevaluate what we do with political rallies. I think we overinvest in them at the expense of the local Mwananchi. This isn't right. This really isn't right and shouldn't be happening, and we need to rethink this. I think political rallies and things like that should start paying for their own security so that they stop messing up with people who are allocated to take care of the rest of the 45 million Kenyans.
So do you blame
all
this
the time.
On the VIP protection?
Yes, I do, because they're really spending a lot. No, they're really spending a lot. They're really spending a lot.
I really
Final
want
comments, gentlemen, sorry.
I really want to pass my sincere condolences to the family that have lost their loved ones in the attack.
That's
my
very
prayer
true.
and my hope is that this will stop. It doesn't matter what it takes. It must stop.
Stop.
Children must not lose their fathers and their mothers, and they must not be left to be orphaned. And my prayer is that the government commits to renew the fight against terror and against such incidents.
That's very true, Danish, very true. We're actually very sorry for those deaths, and we hope that security can be beefed up so these things don't happen in future. But earlier we asked you, do opinion polls help or hurt the politics in this country? Do opinion polls help or hurt the politics in this country? Just to read a few of your responses, Mr. Ochieng is saying, they're a useful indicator, but they are to be taken with a pinch of salt. And Ramnik Ikumiro says it's a very nice debate. He's following it keenly. Not exactly a response to the question, but thank you very much. Somebody else responding to another question there, saying that the president should sign into law the death penalty for corruption perpetrators and not just SGR vandals, as we had agreed earlier. Indeed, thank you so much for joining us today on News Sources. I have been joined by Ramadan and Danish and by Dr. Nelly, of course. My name is Julie Masiga. Do join us next week again on News Sources, Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Thank you so much and have a good night. Coming up is KTN Prime.